If you've never met Nick before, then you have missed an absolute treat. Nick is such a massive advocate for us in the NHS. He doesn't kind of pick and choose who he goes and supports. He supports everybody, don't you? And through your NHS supply chain, but also through your Compass remit, and mainly for us, through things like the Craft Guild of Chefs, you have that open opportunity to go and talk to anyone.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, your career moves in lots of different ways. You know, and my career was never NHS. It was kind of, you know, fine dining or contract catering, a lot of time in the Royal Navy, running the Royal Naval Cookery School. But I think whatever you do in life, you do for a reason. And, you know, even when I was captain of the England national team cooking in the Olympics, you know, to doing what I'm doing now with the NHS, they all have a place. It is so important. And it's about developing the chefs in any kitchen, in any industry, in any walk of life, to do the very best that they can do each and every day. And for the last 5 years, I've probably focused more of my time on the NHS than anything else. Once I stepped down from the England national team. But the last 5 years have probably been the most transformational one for me. Being able to make a difference, to add value, and to latch onto something and go into hospitals and meet the people that work in those hospitals. The chefs and all the assistants that work within your trust are so amazing. I was inspired by their dedication. They're the unsung heroes of this industry. And if I can help shine a light on them, then that's a great thing. That's why we have NHS Chef of the Year. That's why we created the NHS Chefs Academy. And that's why we created this book. Because I met Charlotte, and she's on later, and heard her story. And we decided to write a small book, it's not massive, with dietitians and nutritionalists, just about child feeding, how we can make child feeding a little bit more interesting, try and fulfill some of Sophie's wishes in making it better, putting fun into food, giving kids what they want in hospitals, not what they have to have. Give them choice, give them variety. And next week, well actually, today, you get the PDF, do they, of the new one? So the new book is out. Cello used to work in marketing. This one's called More Please. The new one's called Even More Please, Second Helping. So, yeah, so that's out. So, yeah, it's brilliant.
Okay, listen, we're going to let you prep up a little bit here and just talk us through. What dishes are you going to do today?
So what I'm going to do today, it says soup for the soul. That's the dish I got told to do, given to do, I should say. So I'm doing soup, but I'm just doing one simple soup. And what I'm going to talk about is the importance of soup. It sounds simple, but it is so important to people in hospitals. Soup is a go-to for some people all the time. And I think it's underestimated how important it is. I think you can make a difference to people's lives by doing a good soup. And I'm going to do a soup which is just a vegetable soup. It's actually in the new kids book. And I know a lot of people say, kids don't eat soup. They might eat this one. So, and I'm going to talk about how you can take that soup and turn it into something slightly different for a more wholesome, bigger meal. And talk about some of the breads that you would serve with the soup, but also some of the garnishes that you can do toppers on it to make it more interesting. What I call pimping it up a little bit and making it a bit more interesting. So what I'm starting off here is a little bit of oil in the pan, and I'm going to sweat off some onions and garlic in here. I think, is it on the screen? Oh, it is. All right, that's so cool. Very much Blue Peter-ish, this. It's a bit of a kit.
Nick, you mentioned about the fact that soup may be not, you know, on children's, but you deliberately put that recipe in the book, didn't you? Because all of us involved in NHS catering, we know how important soup is, you know, throughout the day. If it's hearty, it's great. Unfortunately, we have too many, you know, wet soups, nothing in it, no nutritional value whatsoever, and that's what gets the bad reputation. But actually, a homemade soup is as good as anything, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's about the ingredients, like Phil said. I think, you know, when we were in the Royal Navy, we used to have a soup, and we used to have a saying, they come and ask you what soup's on today, and you go, summer soup. Go, summer soup, yeah, some of this, some of that, a bit of this, bit of that in there. And, you know, I'm not saying there's a place for that, but I think there's got to be a bit more thought around it. I think about the nutritional value, the vegetables, the seasonality, all that kind of stuff. Don't just get what's left, blitz it and put it out as soup. I know it happens, but unless you get that combination right and the seasoning right and the accompaniments right, it might not be a great experience. And that's what we don't want.
Now, some of you won't know how competitive Mr. Vadis is, okay? Have you heard a term twice that he's used already? And that's the... Who'd you work for, Chef? Was it the Royal Navy?
Yes.
It was the Royal Navy, and of course Mr. Ratcliffe was in the RAF. So it's a competition every day of who can mention their service the most. It's 2-0, Tim. You need to sort it out, mate, okay?
I'd just like to add to that, though, because, you know, at the end of the day, the Royal Navy is the senior service. Timothy. And he already made a joke in part 1 of this today about my height, didn't he? Did you pick up on that? They all can see me, and if they can't see me, they'll hear me. So yeah, there's a lot of competition. So what I've done, I've sweated the onions, sweated the garlic off. I've now added carrots and potato and parsnips into there. Now these carrots and these veg have got the skin on, so we haven't taken the skin off. They've been diced finely. We've washed them, cleaned them, but we've left the skin on. And we've left the skin on for a reason. They don't need to peel it, but I'll come on to later about what you can do with that peel if you do decide to take it off. So I'm just sweating this off now. There's a little bit of rubbed thyme in there. Well, I use fresh thyme. Just going in. Don't need a lot of it. This soup takes approximately, in a pan like this, probably about 30 minutes to make from start to finish, and then blitzing. And into that now, we've got some potatoes. A bit like blue Peter, isn't it? It's all in the pan.
And on a cost point of view, because we've heard so much, the challenges basically are around workforce, having the skills in the kitchen, but also about the cost of food. I mean, what sort of value are we talking about here, do you think, Nick?
This is a portion of this will be pence. But, I kind of, when we create a lot of the dishes, we don't really we look at cost, obviously, but we don't make that our overriding factor. At the end of the day, food's got to be good. And if it's good, people will eat it. If it goes to a patient on a bedside, they don't eat it, comes back to the kitchen and goes in the bin, that's money down the drain. So, I'd rather make something better and somebody eats it. It's a pity you haven't got a sniffathon here, because it smells great, this veg coming through.
Can I have a hands up for those, not those that are just cooking, but those trusts, those sites, who actually makes homemade soup on their trusts and in their sites? Okay, let's think probably about 40%, 50, yeah. So probably around 35, 40% of you are doing that. And if you're not doing that, I presume it's down to not having the skills or not having the equipment to do it. I mean, some of the boilers and the brat pans, the flexi chefs, all those sort of bits of equipment.
Well, this piece of equipment here behind us, if you get the veg and your trimmings and everything, I've just been told by Ewan, you can make a soup in there in 6 minutes from start to finish. So that's amazing, really. Technology is moving on so fast. I mean, I'm just using a small hand blender here today, which is dead easy, but they do bigger versions. So where we are now is the veg is all sweated off. There's a little bit of colour on the base of the pan. I'm now going to add in, it could be a vegetable stock, it could be a chicken stock. If you want a veg soup, clearly you wouldn't use chicken stock. So this one is a veg stock. And that now, all in the pan, bar doing a bit of seasoning. Can we have a show of hands who seasons their food in the hospitals? Do you season your food? Do you have salt and pepper and everything like that going in? I know a lot of our government contracts within Compass Group, they can't have salt and pepper in the kitchen, which is tough. You've got to really, to try and get seasoning into dishes, but there are other ways of getting an umami flavour, and that's where thinking about the ingredients come into it. So that would simmer now for half an hour. There we go. However, in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I prepared earlier. So, what I did with this in the kitchen behind, I basically blitzed it with a hand blender. You can see that on camera, can't you? Yeah. So it's quite thick. It's not a thin, watery soup. It's got a bit of viscosity to it. And that's purely made up of the vegetables, and that's been blitzed. Now, me personally, I love a pureed soup. But equally, a chunky soup is just as heartening. And I think sometimes people don't think out the box enough, because if you want a chunky soup, you don't have to make two soups. You can have a mise en place tray like this somewhere else in the kitchen. So what I've got here is I've got cooked chicken, I've got roasted parsnips, I've got roasted carrots, beans, some pearl barley and grains, and I've got sweated off onions and garlic there. So all those component parts and thyme, which could go into a chunkier soup. And I'm going to transform this soup into what I call a stoop. Has anybody heard of that word before? I didn't just create that. I read it somewhere else, honest. So a stoop is a cross between a soup and a stew. But what it'll create then is a more wholesome dish. So traditionally, you would probably have a soup in a bowl or a cup, like that, a small bowl. And Tim's already talked about the virtues and the benefits of using this blue crockery from Churchill China. And we've seen some amazing results in the truss that we've put it in, haven't we, Phil?
Yeah. Oh, you know, over 20% of those wastage figures are coming down. We're also seeing the fact that patients are intaking that nutrition. So not only are we not wasting, but the recovery process is quicker because they're actually taking in that nutrition. And Nick, this very much duplicates what the messaging you're sharing at the NHS Chef competition, isn't it? Around the sort of the double using of foods and how we can mix it up. Because vegetable soups are generally what we see in the NHS. But as you said, you can bring all these ingredients in and maybe serve it in retail as a totally different dish.
Absolutely, and that could go into, in retail, it could go into a deeper cup with a lid on it and take it away and serve it with a spoon. But I know it's quite an emotive subject, 'cause there's a lot of conversations about soup and sandwiches. Does it replace a meal? Should it replace a meal? Could it replace an evening meal? Me sitting outside looking in, I can't see why soup couldn't be a meal or shouldn't be a meal. Because if that's what somebody wants, and if they don't have it, they won't eat anything, then give it to them. You know, I'm a great believer in soups and stuff like that. And I think do that or make it into a stoop and get all that goodness and vegetables in there, serve it with some really good bread, it's a meal in itself. But also, soup's comforting, isn't it? You know, people sometimes, you know, I'll relate back to my time in the Navy, Timothy. When we're at sea and you've been away for 3 or 4 weeks or months at a time, and the evening meal was a real focal point of the day. People look forward to going and eating an evening meal. And it could change the morale of the whole ship's company by having a good meal. So it's just as important in hospital when you're trapped in a bed. It's like being trapped at sea. Having a good meal at the end of the day or the middle of the day or even in the morning is so important to your well-being and your state of mind as well. So I've poured out a couple of soups there. I'm now going to start adding these component parts into this, what I would call stoop. I'm not going to put them all in because I've done far too much prep here. So, and obviously the key thing here is make sure it comes up to temperature.
But Nick, you touched on it there really, that sometimes we've got less influence at ward level than we probably want. You know, and we talk a lot about the last 9 yards and we talk a lot about the controlling nature. But one thing that we've lost is that social part of the meal experience, haven't we? Where, unfortunately, meal times are just rushed. You know, it's 20 minutes, it's pushed through, it's a part of the ward activity, and it's not seen as patient time, you know, and allowing friends and family to come and eat with people. But you're right, how comforting can that be?
And I'm just going to add to this one, I'm going to add a little bit of chopped parsley, just put a bit of herb through it. But if you can see the pan in the screen above, you can see it in that pan now. It looks like a wholesome meal, doesn't it? Lots of what I would call particulates in there and bits and bobs. Oh, sorry, go into the centre. Are we in the centre? Yes, there we go. Right, as you can see, it's there. I've added about 2/3 of what I prepped there. It's nice and warm. I'm going to move it back onto there to keep it warm. And then want to talk about kind of breads as well. All too often, breads get overlooked that go with soup. There's nothing wrong. You know, the amount of places I've been in and what we teach about in the Chef's Academy is don't just go for the cheap white roll. If you can go for something a little bit more different, you can buy a lot of these breads frozen, and they are good, and you can cut them into chunks, you know, and they do keep, and almost could be a la minute. You could, you know, do them more or less to order. So a nice flavoured bread, a nice cob bread there, but a big chunk of that, probably the same size as a roll, served with a soup on the side, is really comforting and really nice to have. So I just brought those breads in as well. Soup's ticking over. These two are done here. And now I want to bring into shot, oh yeah, there they are, the toppers. Now this is endless. This could go on forever, the toppers. So what this one here is the vegetable peelings and some vegetables which are in that soup. So that is parsnips and carrots, little bit of oil. Oh, I've moved it over. Little bit of oil. And what I've done is created some little crisps. And equally, they look great just on top of the soup, making it look a little bit more funky, a little bit more different. And the thing about kids as well, if you're trying to get kids to eat soup, you've got to kind of pimp it up and get them to relate to it and make it more fun. That's why I've got here, I've got popcorn. Now, people think popcorn and soup, but this is salted popcorn. So a little bit of that on the soup is really cool, I think, to have popcorn and soup, just making it a little bit more interesting. I've also got crispy onions. Most kitchens have these. They use them for hot dogs and things like that. Get them into the soup, get them on top of the soup. Nachos. Nachos are great with soup. Kids eat nachos. It's not all about kids. Grown-ups eat them as well, with a beer. And then you've got spicy mix, so a seed mix with a bit of spice going through it. Again, interesting food. And the good old classic crouton, which everybody likes. And this is made up of the stale bread from yesterday and just toasted in the oven with a few herbs. Now, you're seeing cherry tomatoes here. My granddaughter will eat tomato soup, but I put a bowl of these out next to it and she eats them as well. And it's weird, it's about keeping food separate. And in the new book we've just brought out, Even More Please, Second Helping, we have got a section on that about keeping your food separate. Some kids don't want their food all together on the plate, so there's an article in there about how to separate the food so they get a plate with a chili con carne or a spaghetti bolognese, but the pasta's separate, the bolognese sauce is separate, and the garnish is separate, and they'll eat it. And I know that for a fact because my granddaughter eats like that, so I could relate to that as well. So that's why the cherry tomatoes are there. But it's just thinking out the box.
Nick, we need to finish off now. So are you happy just to plate up your dish here?
Yeah.
And just finally, as I said earlier on, Nick is probably our biggest advocate. Just very, very quickly tell us the difference that NHS Chef has made over these 5 years to the people that you work with.
I can't stress enough how important competitions are. You know, I've done competitions most of my culinary career, and I've seen the benefit they've brought to me, but also to the people around me when I've encouraged them to compete. Chef of the Year is a game changer for the NHS. It not only puts the NHS chefs on a pedestal they need to be on, it creates awareness to them as well, which is just as important. And what we've done over the last 5 years has been transformational. You know, the NHS Chef of the Year now gets talked about in all the magazines, in all the periodicals that come out, with the Craft Guild of Chefs, to cost sector catering and public sector catering. It is so important. And we're seeing a change. You know, we're seeing a change in the hospitals that they come from. And every year, new trusts throw their hat in the ring and put new teams in, and it can only grow from here. And this year, We had a record amount of entries this year. We've just completed all the semi-finals. We've now announced the 8 finalist teams that will be going to the mentor event next week and then on them to York. And this year, we've got a gala dinner at the end where we're actually going to celebrate the winner. And we've seen it grow year on year. And in this audience here, I can see competitors that have been in Chef of the Year. I can see winners over there somewhere. Well, I did. She's run off now. But we're seeing people that have been in Chef of the Year and experienced it. And I know you've just done a little book about your journey, haven't you? Which is amazing, of the transformational change with you and the team since you embarked on that journey. So, yeah.
Well, you can see these dishes that Nick has created. They are pretty well low cost, aren't they? So anything is possible. All the challenges that you're facing, anything is possible. Come and talk to Nick, to Tim, myself, and any of the team. We're here to support you and get you to a place where you want to be. Round of applause, please. Nick Vadis.
Thank you.